Have you ever come across this political cartoon before? Even if you don't know who drew it, the image is hard to forget. It shows Japan charging at Russia during the Russo-Japanese War, while Britain quietly pushes it forward from behind. It's witty, cynical, and surprisingly insightful. A cartoon that captured the politics of its time with remarkable precision. The man behind it was a French artist named Georges Bigot. Like many Europeans, during the Japonism craze of the 1880s, Bigot came to Japan fascinated by its art and culture. But instead of simply admiring the country, he began drawing satirical cartoons about it. Why? What was it about Meiji Japan that left him with such a lasting sense of unease? Today we're exploring the life of Georges Bigot and the Japan he saw through foreign eyes. Japonisme and Bigot's arrival in Japan. Georges Bigot arrived in Japan in 1882 when he was just 21 years old. At the time, Europe was experiencing a wave of fascination with Japan known as Japonisme. One of the major catalysts was the Paris World's Fair, where visitors were introduced to Japanese lacquerware, ceramics, kimono, folding screens, and many other traditional works of art and craftsmanship. Among all of them, nothing left a greater impression than ukiyo-e woodblock prints. Until then, Western art had largely focused on religious themes and classical mythology, portraying grand and noble subjects with realistic detail. Japanese ukiyo-e was completely different. Instead of kings, gods, or heroes, it celebrated ordinary people, everyday scenery, and fleeting moments of daily life. Rather than pursuing realism, ukiyo-e embraced bold compositions, stylized forms, and vibrant colors to capture the beauty of ordinary life. This fresh artistic style amazed painters across Europe. People began to see Japan itself as a land of beauty. Bigot was one of the young French illustrators captivated by that vision. In his imagination, Japan was a refined and peaceful country with a unique sense of beauty. That dream inspired him to travel all the way from France to Japan. But the Japan that greeted him was nothing like the one he had imagined. The Japan Bigot encountered. The Japan Bigot encountered was changing at an astonishing pace. People were wearing Western-style clothing, learning ballroom dancing and adopting Western architecture, laws and institutions one after another. This was the era of Bunmei Kaika, Japan's ambitious movement of modernization and Westernization, but much of it still didn't feel natural. The movements were awkward. The manners seemed rehearsed. It was as if an entire nation was desperately trying to imitate what it believed was the correct way to be modern. Meanwhile, another part of Japan was quietly disappearing. The tradition of ukiyo-e, which had once captivated Europe, was rapidly fading away. The beauty of everyday life, the very beauty that had inspired Bigot to come to Japan, was slowly vanishing. The more he observed Japan, the stronger his sense of unease became, and that unease would ultimately change the course of his life. When Bigot first arrived in Japan, he worked as one of the Oyatoi Gaikokujin, foreign specialists hired by the Meiji government to help modernize the country. But over time, his interests shifted away from teaching art, toward observing Japanese society itself, and from those observations came satire. Eventually, Bigot founded his own satirical magazine, Tobae. Through humor, irony, and sharp observation, he began portraying Meiji Japan through the eyes of an outsider. Satire, journalism, and Bigot's view of Meiji Japan. It was through satire that Bigot began portraying Japanese society. His most famous platform was a satirical magazine called Tobae. Published mainly for the French community living in Japan, it used humor and irony to comment on the country's politics, society, and rapid transformation. So what kind of Japan did Bigot portray? One of his best-known cartoons depicts a ball at the Rokumeikan, an extravagant Western-style reception hall built by the Meiji government to entertain foreign diplomats. At the time, Japan was eager to prove to the Western powers that it was a modern, civilized nation worthy of equal treatment. The Rokumeikan quickly became the symbol of Bunmei Kaika, Japan's ambitious movement of modernization and Westernization. In this cartoon, Bigot labels the elegantly dressed Japanese guests namaiki, a word that roughly means pretentious or trying too hard. To him, they looked like people who had adopted the appearance of Western, civilization without truly making it their own. What troubled Bigot wasn't the Japanese people themselves, it was watching a nation race to imitate. The West before those new customs had naturally become part of everyday life. Ironically, the lavish balls held at the Rokumeikan didn't impress every foreign visitor. Although many diplomats attended and appeared to enjoy the events, their private letters and diaries often described the performances as awkward, even comical. There was another irony as well. Very few Japanese women had actually learned Western ballroom dancing. As a result, trained geisha were recruited to dance with the guests, and even female students from elite schools were brought in to help fill the ballroom. Japan was doing everything it could to catch up with the West, but to Bigot, something about it still felt unnatural, yet his cartoons were never simply meant to mock. Behind the humor was always the same question: is this really the right path? But satire was only one side of Bigot's work. He was also a journalist and war correspondent. During the First Sino-Japanese War, he traveled with the Japanese army, sketching the battlefield and documenting the dramatic changes taking place across the country. He wasn't observing Japan from afar. He was witnessing history as it unfolded. That perspective is especially clear in one of his most famous political cartoons, Fishing for Korea. The cartoon cleverly depicts Japan, Qing China, and Russia competing for influence over the Korean peninsula. It shows that Bigot wasn't simply documenting Japan's modernization. He was also capturing the geopolitical struggle surrounding the country. He understood that Japan's challenge wasn't just becoming modern. It was surviving in a world dominated by imperial powers, and that's what gave his satire its lasting power. His cartoons weren't superficial jokes. They were remarkably sharp observations of a nation trying to redefine itself. Returning home in Bigot's legacy. As time went on, Bigot's cartoons began attracting unwanted attention from the authorities. His sharp observations of politics and society were not always welcomed. Then, in 1899, Japan finally succeeded in revising the unequal treaties. With that change came the end of extraterritoriality, the legal privilege that had long protected foreign residents from Japanese courts. Bigot had never fully trusted Japan's legal system. Faced with this new reality, he decided it was time to leave. Yet during the 17 years he spent in Japan, he had never viewed the country from a distance. Standing at just around 160 centimeters, Bigot was about the same height as the average Japanese man of his time. He blended naturally into everyday life. He walked the same streets, watched the same people, and quietly observed the rhythms of ordinary life. That's why his drawings captured something more than appearances. They captured the atmosphere of Meiji Japan itself. Even after returning to France, Bigot never stopped painting Japan, but something had changed. His later works were no longer driven by satire. Instead, they depicted quiet streets, peaceful landscapes, and the simple beauty of everyday life. They were the Japan he had fallen in love with. Looking at these paintings today, it's hard not to sense a feeling of nostalgia, a longing for the Japan that was gradually disappearing. During his lifetime in Japan, Bigot's cartoons were far from universally appreciated. Today, however, they are recognized as invaluable historical records of the Meiji era. They remind us that sometimes an outsider notices things that those living inside a society no longer see. And because Bigot continued to draw those moments, we can still glimpse Meiji Japan through his eyes. Georges Bigot came to Japan because he admired it. So why did this country leave him with such a lasting sense of unease? Perhaps it was because Japan was trying to define itself through the eyes of the West. Bigot turned that unease into satire. His cartoons were humorous, they were witty. But beneath the laughter, there was always a question. Is this really the right path? More than a century later, perhaps that question is no longer just about Meiji Japan. Perhaps it's a question for all of us. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe for more deep dive history content. See you in the next video.